The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to Are You Afraid? 1984, the unofficial American Horror Story 1984 podcast, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Thursday, October 24th, 2019, and I'm your host, Jeffrey Arauz. During this podcast, we're going to recap, review, and dissect the latest episode of the FX series American Horror Story 1984. Please welcome my co-hosts, Madison Fitzpatrick.
Hey guys.
And Vinnie Hatcher.
Hello.
Let's jump into our recap of Season 9, Episode 6, which was appropriately titled Episode 100, and aired October 23rd, 2019. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. With the horrors of the night behind them, the survivors deal with the fallout of their choices. So I want to get everyone's initial reaction to the episode, the momentous 100th episode of American Horror Story. And I hardly ever go first, so I'll start off. And I will say, as an episode of American Horror Story 1984 of the season, I thought it was a very good episode. I really liked the episode because it was almost like an epilogue to everything that we saw. It was like an epilogue / setup episode that clearly is setting things up, things to come for the next couple of episodes as we head directly into the season finale. As a 100th episode for American Horror Story, I found it just a teeny tiny bit lacking. I would have liked to have seen more, and my first question actually for both of you, once we get out of the initial reaction section, is about it being the 100th episode. So we're going to go into detail about that momentarily. So, Maddie, what about you? What did you think of the episode, your initial reaction?
I liked this episode a little bit more than the episodes prior. As a 100th episode, I think it lacked a bit, especially because this is American Horror Story. I feel like it should have been insane, although it did have to tie into the season itself, so I can see how they didn't want to go too far, but I think there could have been more, but I did really enjoy the episode.
All right, so we're on the same page. Vinnie, what about you?
I'm going to continue the trend. I was very, very happy with it as an episode of 1984 in and of itself. I mean, it obviously added a lot to the story. It gave us, a really good feel as far as continuing the storyline, the aftermath of what happened. But I'm continuing to agree with the two of you regarding, I was really disappointed as this being a 100th episode of the entire season, or series, excuse me, especially because we were in the promo in the previous week, I believe we were actually given a red herring. We were given this it's the 100th episode of American Horror Story, and there were flashbacks to all the previous seasons. So for me, that planted a seed in my mind that there was going to be maybe a surprise returning character or characters, or, just more Easter eggs, maybe more of content relating to the overall series because it's such a monumental episode. But that aside, I really did enjoy the episode itself.
All right, so we're all on the same page. So before we get into a thorough recap of the latest episode of American Horror Story 1984, here's our announcer with a few special announcements.
Follow Papi Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Papi Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychularadio.com. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chula Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@poppychularadio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chula Radio programs by visiting poppychularadio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for Are You Afraid? 1984 and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. So before we get into the actual episode, which I think is a very simple episode to actually break down because it was sort of almost like individual plays. I mean, there were vignettes catching us up to where the characters are post that fateful night at Camp Redwood in 1984. So let's talk about this. It's the 100th episode. It's a monumental occasion for any series. I feel like especially nowadays when a series gets to episode 100, it's a big damn deal. For American Horror Story because it is a cable series and because it is the type of cable series that has a shorter season than most. It's done sort of in the British style of television. So it does take a cable series a lot longer to reach episode 100, which makes it even, a more monumental occasion because that means that the series has been renewed for several seasons. Here, it's season 9 and it's reaching episode 100 on a typical broadcast series. If it's got a full season, 22-ish episodes, it'll reach it usually by season 5. So it took a little longer, but we're here. And, I guess I'll start off by talking about it. For me, I wish that there were more callbacks. Like, I get that this is such a distinct season that, we were probably not going to see any characters from previous seasons during this episode. I was fully expecting that. But I wish that we would have had callbacks. Like what American Horror Story does at its best, or does the best, I should say, is they find a way to tie things into other seasons. And usually the Easter eggs aren't very blatant. They're kind of snuck in at times, or they come in a surprising kind of way, and then all of a sudden you realize that, okay, this character is related to that character, or all of a sudden this character shows up that was in another season, and that sort of thing, and it's really exciting when that happens on American Horror Story, and I wish we would have had a little bit more of that in this episode. I don't think I said this when you were here, Maddie. I feel like I had this conversation with Vinnie, but I think the Apocalypse season would have been a really great season for the season that had episode 100. Like they could have done Apocalypse this season and the Murder House episode, even though it didn't really tie into any other seasons, but because that was the season that started it all, the Murder House episode of Apocalypse would have been a really good episode 100 for American Horror Story. But I do feel like the Apocalypse season ended up happening last year because I would assume all the ducks sort of lined up in a row for Ryan Murphy, and he had to take advantage of everybody being available last year. So he had to do that season when everyone was available. So I would assume that's what happened. But this episode, I'll go into just what we got, and really all that we got was the fact that that Margaret was going to be purchasing the Briarcliff asylum, and that was really it. Like, if they would have done the motel instead of it being a motel, it would have been the Hotel Cortez. That could have been a way to tie things into to previous season. If they would have flashed some other properties that maybe she was thinking of purchasing, maybe this plot of land in Roanoke. I'm trying to think of what other landmarks. The Murder House. What are the other iconic landmarks? The LaLaurie House. Something like that. I think that could have worked. To tie in maybe Cult and Freak Show. When we saw that family next door in the other motel room, maybe they could have flashed by, one of the kids reading a Twisty the Clown graphic novel or something like that, and that could have tied in that season, or those seasons, I should say. So I feel like there were just missed opportunities for like little winks and nods to the past that I found just a bit disappointing. And maybe it was because of the promo that Vinny referenced. The promo started off beautifully with like a flash back to like several characters and moments from all of the previous seasons. And then it was like, the 100th episode. So I was like, damn, maybe they are going to find a way to sort of tie things in. But they didn't. And I feel like some of the stuff could have been just so simple, even if it was just a little name drop or something like that. And they didn't take advantage of that. And that was just a teeny tiny bit disappointing for me. So, Vinny, what about you? Your thoughts on just the episode 100 of it all?
I mean, I don't want to be a broken record, but I completely concur. I really enjoyed the episode. Like, I feel like I need to keep reiterating that like I did, but at the same time, I just was expecting more. And even though I did enjoy it as an episode in the standalone series of 1984, I also felt it was, like you mentioned, the standalone chapters, and I was just expecting a lot more, I think. Maybe I was expecting a big bang, a big reveal, or, a monumental, humongous death, a massacre. I don't know. But I walked away liking it and enjoying it, but when I look at it for what it was, I agree. I feel that like the Briarcliff purchase was such a minor reference, and at the same time, I feel like they've also been dropping these like breadcrumb Easter eggs the entire season, from when we saw Ramirez and Jingles drive off towards wherever, and then the sign poked up and it showed Los Angeles, and we've just had these little smatterings of things showing up that just made me really feel like Murphy was going to have this monumental reveal, like we were all, wondering if it was going to happen or not, because this would have been the episode. So was I disappointed that it didn't happen? No, but when I look at it as the overall series, especially, with what we experienced in the promo and just I felt like the ending of it was kind of, I don't know if mild is the right word, but I don't want to say underwhelming because that's overly negative. It was just kind of calm compared to what I would have expected from this. But other than that, the episode gave us some really good performances. It gave us some really good information about characters, and it really kind of surprised me. I did not necessarily expect some of the ways that people had ended up. I didn't expect characters to maybe make choices that they did, and there were one or two surprises. But yeah, I continue to concur about it. I have to keep reminding myself to judge it as an episode of 1984 and forget about the fact that it was such a penultimate episode of the entire series.
Exactly. I will say, I forgot to mention him, but we did get a returning cast member from a previous season. We had Leslie Jordan return, which that was
I
a
was
pleasant...
so happy when I saw him.
I know. That was a pleasant surprise.
Oh my God, yeah.
I will say, after looking at some Easter eggs from this episode, there were little things that did connect to other seasons, but it was just, they were like fleeting references. Apparently, Rick Springfield was listed as one of the participants of the music festival, and he was in the Cult season. They mentioned John Wayne Gacy and Ed Gein, and as well as the Manson family and that sort of thing. But even those little lines just they weren't that impressive to me, to be quite honest, because they weren't sort of like overt references to previous seasons and that kind of stuff. Maddie, what about you? I feel like we are all sort of like beating a dead horse, but I do want to get your take on it. What about you in the whole episode 100 situation?
Yeah, like I feel like it could have been a little bit bigger. The references, like you guys were saying, would have been amazing. Like I really enjoyed as an episode of 1984, like all the references to the serial killers and stuff like that. Like that was pretty cool. Since this whole season is like serial killer based. So it was exciting in that way. But as a 100th episode, I think bringing in different characters, like I thought the cameo of like Sarah Paulson would have been in this one. You know what I mean? Because I've been waiting to see different characters and actresses and actors in it, and they haven't come up yet. So it kind of disappointing in a way, but I don't know. It wasn't horrible, but I thought it could have been a bit more insane.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, 100%. And I feel like a lot of people were expecting that, and so it is unfortunate. I feel like they just missed out on a really important opportunity. I mean, not that many cable series last until episode 100. And I know that American Horror Story is a very unique beast because it is an anthology series, or at least for the most part, it's an anthology series. So it's very difficult maybe to even process what a 100th episode could look like for an anthology series, but because they've already set it up to have the connections, just little lines here and there of dialogue would have sufficed, I think. I think we all really would have liked to have seen some of our favorites return to appear, visually on the show. But even just little lines of like dialogue or something like that. Like I was actually looking around as I watched the episode to see if we would get any sort of moments that would echo moments of the past, and there wasn't even any of that, like any sort of homages to previous seasons. So it was a little disappointing. But let's actually talk about the episode. So much happened, and as I referenced, it's done very much in vignette style. It's to catch us up on everyone post what happened that night. And let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. 1 year after everything that happened at Camp Redwood, we see Jingles with the Night Stalker, and they are compatriots basically. They're roaming through Los Angeles, and Jingles is there to basically witness Richard Ramirez doing what he does best, which is murder people, apparently in the name of Satan. And there's a moment where it looks like he's going to murder maybe the family that's staying next door to them in the motel, but Jingles stops him, and you could tell that Jingles is kind of done with everything Richard Ramirez. And so later on, when they make a little pit stop, Jingles ends up alerting some of the locals about the Night Stalker after seeing, a picture of him. And that leads to Richard Ramirez getting captured and arrested. And it frees Jingles.
Can I just talk about this for like a few seconds?
Sure. This is actually where I'm going to stop. And it frees Jingles from Richard Ramirez. So Maddie is feeling very passionate about this because she does have books on the satanic arts. You do, though.
Oh my God, no, I don't.
I've seen pictures of them.
Anyways.
Maddie. She's dying now. When you were totally accepting of this during the apocalypse season, Maddie.
Okay, fine, yes. Satan worshiper over here.
Well, no, I never said that, but you just admitted it, and now we have it on tape.
Anyways, so this whole Richard Ramirez situation, I don't know if you guys follow true crime or know about Richard Ramirez and his actual case, but this is actually how he was like captured in real
Jingles
life.
Was there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, but somebody recognized him, and he was trying to, do his thing and capture somebody or whatever. It didn't work out, and somebody recognized him in the street, and a whole crowd of people in this town chased him down and captured him and started beating him, and the police saw and captured him eventually. But
That's
it was these
funny.
people.
No, that's funny because I read comments where people were like, that didn't really happen like that, did it? And I didn't know. So I was like, I don't know. But you're now telling me that that's exactly how it happened. So that's hilarious.
So the whole time I was watching it, I was like, this is amazing. This is so funny. The fact that it's like Jingles was just like, hey, look at this picture over there. You're welcome. And the whole time we're like, Mr. Jingles is in the car and he's like, hi. And Richard Ramirez just looks at him. I died because it's like, this is so funny because this is how he was captured in real life, was this big crowd of people literally chasing him down the street and like just gunning for him, and they caught him as a group, like as a community. So I thought it was hilarious, and yeah, so I don't know if you guys knew that or whatever, or even if our listeners knew that either, but I thought it was pretty funny.
That is
My favorite part
amazing.
was the fact that as he drove away, it was almost like a commercial because he was drinking a tab.
It's very 80s.
Yeah, very 80s. I knew that this was how Ramirez was actually captured in real life, and I love the fact that they kind of turned it into like almost like a Scooby-Doo type thing. Because with like Ramirez running and just being chased by all these people, I just kept hearing like the themes that you hear when like people are chased in Scooby-Doo. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, but for some reason there was definitely like an 80s kind of comical overtone or undertone to it. But yeah, I agree with you, Maddie. It was very awesome that they kind of included that Easter egg.
That's very fascinating. That's cool. It's really good to know. I believe, Maddie, you are a serial killer person, right? You like the true crime stuff?
Yes, true crime, yep.
Okay, that's very cool. I will say, this is a little Easter egg about my life. I once thought I saw the Unabomber in Walgreens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the Unabomber, though. At least I don't know. I don't think he was ever in Florida. But yeah, I remember seeing the magazine. I was like, that man looks like the Unabomber.
My one like true crime correlation is actually pretty depressing.
Oh.
So on September 11th, my mother woke me and my boyfriend at the time up and told me about the first plane crashing. And we went out back into our backyard where we would smoke our cigarettes. And as we were walking out, I looked up and I just looked over at my mom and I'm like, Mom, do we ever have planes flying over us here? Because where we were was not in a direct like flight path. And then like literally like 15, 20 minutes later, we heard about the one in the Pentagon.
Oh.
Yeah, it was, it still gives me goosebumps in a bad way.
Well, yeah. Okay, well, that was a bummer.
I know, now that I've lowered the mood.
Yes. Let's go on a murder spree at Camp Redwood.
Yeah.
Yes. So 4 years later, we see that some of the ghosts that we know at Camp Redwood are enjoying the murderous life, mainly Montana and Xavier. They end up murdering Dude and his girlfriend, and much to the dismay or to the annoyance or the disappointment of Ray, who has sort of become the moral compass of the group and is like, you can't kill people. What are you doing? The other counselors, the ones from the what year was that?
Wasn't it like 1990 something, I thought, or 1989?
No, I'm saying, what year was it when Margaret was a kid in the camp? The 70s?
I think it was the 70s,
Yeah, like early 70s, yeah. Those counselors, the ghosts of those counselors are also annoyed at them for going on a murder spree, but Montana and Xavier, talk about enjoying killing so much and that sort of thing. So yeah, so what do we think of Montana and Xavier sort of embracing the life of a killer, and seeing Ray, as sort of the beacon of hope, the one that's chastising them for their murderous ways? Vinny?
I honestly kind of thought it was going to be the other way around. I was very disappointed for Xavier's character to suddenly become so like murder happy, because he seemed to be the one that was not as much of a coward as Ray was. And he was the one that was like, we've got to save this person. We've got to save that person. And for Ray to be the voice of reason was very surprising to me at first. But then the more that I actually thought about it, it does make sense that Xavier and Ray would kind of switch places, and Xavier would go down the route of going down the other side of the spectrum and being like, you know what? I was a fucking Nancy Drew this entire time, and now all of a sudden I got myself put into a freaking oven, I got my skin burnt off, and then I got gutted like a fish. So F this, I'm stuck in purgatory, I'm going to gut every MFer that I see. And Ray had all this time to kind of ponder the efficacy of being a coward, which led him to decapitation and ghost sex, which that probably wasn't a downside, but Yeah, it was interesting. Montana, I totally was not surprised. She was exactly as I expected her to be as a phantasm. She, murdering everybody and luring him in with the old like 80s woman sitting on the pier with her boobies almost hanging out and then gutting the guy when he was like, it was hilarious to me. Absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I will agree that Montana wasn't that surprising. The Xavier thing bugged me as well. Based off of how Ray was in the previous episode, I wasn't surprised that he was going to be sort of like the moral compass. I mean, it looks like death really changed him, and for the better, to be quite honest. But Xavier really shocked me. Like, I thought he would be, one of the moral compasses in the afterlife. And the fact that he just embraced it and was all Team Montana with killing everyone was a bit disappointing, and it felt a bit out of character for me, at least, just because of what we saw of him. Maybe this was just his evolution, as you mentioned, because he was sort of like, fuck it, I'm dead, might as well do whatever I want. But it was still a bit disappointing. What about you, Maddie?
Yeah, I didn't like Xavier like kind of switching to the bad side, but like at the same time, I don't blame him. Um, and I don't know, the whole fact of them being ghosts, I don't know if I like it, and I don't know if I like the way that these ghosts are. Like in the murder house and stuff like that, like we had ghosts, but they were more, I don't know, ghosty. Like, I don't know. I feel like these ghosts are just like, oh yeah, they're there, but they're ghosts. Like they're real people. You can still touch them. You can still, do stuff with them. They can still do things. They can still feel things. It's just they're dead and they can just keep resurrecting themselves. Like it just feels like weird. I don't know if you guys feel the same. I just feel like it's a different kind of ghost.
Yeah,
I
because
don't know.
they ended up being more like, I don't know. It was almost like Diet Ghost because they were still being presented almost like humans stuck in purgatory as opposed to a spirit. Um, I agree as well. It was kind of odd, and I kept trying because I'm a nerd like that with the occult and the supernatural, and I was trying to classify what type of supernatural entity they were, and the only thing that I could come close to is that they were basically wraiths that didn't know they were dead, and then when they found out they were dead, they still were given flesh in this kind of purgatory thing because of whatever we have going on at the campground, and it was just weird. And I guess maybe part of it was my nerdiness. I couldn't actually define what they were, and I was focused so much on trying to find out exactly like what was causing them to be like this and all that. It kind of, yeah, it didn't necessarily sit 100% right with me, and I agree. The ghosts in Ghost House or Murder House were much more ghosty, and these ones don't have any powers. That's kind of what it was for me too. Is like I thought that as a ghost you might be able to do something or influence something, but they were basically just humans that kept dying over and over again.
Yeah, like there's like no cold spots or there's no, I don't know, just like ghosty feel stuff. Like I just feel like they're just people, and
Hmm.
I don't know. It's like they're not even like white in the face or anything. Like they just
No, they're
Well,
look
like
they
in the
weren't
prime of their
exactly.
white in the
youth.
face in Murder House, were they?
Yeah,
They weren't white in the face in Murder House. I mean, they looked humanish as
yeah,
well.
but like,
No, they still look the same.
Yeah, and I don't
but
know
it's just
if
like,
like
but you know what I
normal
mean? Like it
people
just, I don't know.
would be discovering cold spots and that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I agree with you that yes, based off of what we've seen before with ghosts, it wasn't necessarily the same. But for me, that's what I liked about it. It seems as if each ghost haunting, each property that's been haunted, has similar elements to what we were introduced to in Murder House, but it's slightly different as well. Like the ghosts from the Hotel Cortez were different than the Murder House versus the Roanoke property ghosts versus these ghosts. So I didn't mind the self awareness of these ghosts, in particular because it is kind of like the 80s, and the 80s was sort of like, that kitschy, ridiculous, over the top, slightly self aware, slightly not uh, era. So I don't know, it kind of felt appropriate for these characters to be ones that would be sort of self-aware of their ghostiness, and the fact that they kind of are reveling in the fact that they can do things, they can do anything they want, basically. And that sort of fits in with like the 80s culture in a sense, it's almost like go big or go home, ridiculously over the top. And that's exactly what the characters are.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So, moving.
Well, no, you didn't win me over.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just acknowledging politely that I can see your perspective.
Oh, okay, there you go. Well, at least you can see it. Maddie can't see shit. No, maybe she does. I don't know. Maddie
So
can't see
rude.
it. It's so rude. I love it. Okay, so moving right along. This was probably the most fascinating of the stories that we saw, just because this one was unexpected, to me at least. Well, the other one was also unexpected in a more heartwarming kind of way. This one was unexpected in a, oh, I did not see that coming kind of way. So, Margaret has become a redonkulously rich real estate mogul, with the big hair and the big shoulder pads to prove it. And we learn that she has married Trevor. So rewind. Trevor survived the attack that Margaret did to him. And initially it looks like he was going to blackmail her into, stuff. But she is, for some reason, like 50 steps ahead of these people. And she was like, no. We're going to get married because you're never going to testify against me, because we're going to be married and a husband cannot testify against his wife and this, that, or the other and all this kind of stuff. And so Trevor has been, I guess, I don't know what you would call it. He is married now to Margaret. And clearly they hate each other. Trevor loathes her, and Margaret hates him as well. Our friend Beverly Leslie shows up as Courtney, Margaret's assistant, and and so they are together, and we learn through the little Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous video that we saw, a little montage, that Margaret has made her name in the real estate arena because she's been purchasing properties that have had a murderous past. So she's been sort of benefiting to her, benefiting by her association to Camp Redwood and the massacres and that kind of stuff. I should. There's an element of this storyline that I will save for Brooke's side of the storyline. But we also see that Margaret's at work, and her most recent deal has sort of fallen through, and Margaret ends up getting the idea to, because she sees an article about Redwood and a recent murder, to to benefit off of Camp Redwood, and so she decides to basically hold a music festival at Camp Redwood. So and she believes that this is going to be a great opportunity for them because murder sells. Yes. I should say that the ghosts are sort of noticing this, and let's just say they aren't necessarily happy about it. So let's talk about this. Margaret, the real estate mogul, Big Dick Trevor as her husband, Beverly Leslie showing up. Maddie, what'd you think of this?
Gross.
Okay.
Disgusting.
Which one? Courtney?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't like Margaret and Mr. Schumer together.
He's not Mr. Schumer ever since he
Yes,
started
he
packing
is.
heat.
Yes, he is.
Well, technically, he was never Mr. Schumer. He was Mr. Schuster.
Oh, well,
right,
that
yeah.
is true, too. Shows how much you liked him,
Oh my god.
Mr. Schumer.
Anyways, I don't like it. I think she's evil. Obviously, we know that. And I just feel bad with him, but I did not expect him to make that deal with her. I feel like he would have been a bit better, like more of a stronger person to basically just say like, screw you, I'm going to the cops type thing. I don't know. I didn't expect him to make that deal with her.
Okay. It was surprising for me too. What about you, Vinny? Were you shocked by Margaret and Trevor?
Yeah, it. I don't know. It kind of seemed like a desperate ploy to get him back on the show in a way. And his
Yeah.
character and all of that, I just didn't. He had a sleazy side to begin with, obviously, but this just didn't. It didn't seem right. It was just like, okay, we're going to make sure that we get Matthew Morrison to continue on the show,
I
and for
know.
that we're going to have that come back.
Because he's Mr. Schumer.
Yeah, Mr. Schumer. But I did enjoy the fact that Margaret became basically like Marla Maples Trump or Ivana Trump. She had that like aesthetic going on, and it was nice to see Margaret finally look like the biatch that she truly is. You know, like that's what I wanted to see, and that's what happened. You know, she finally shed that whole like, oh, I'm actually a super Christian, nice lady who just wants to save the world, and became the selfish, evil woman on the outside that she was the whole time on the inside. So I didn't necessarily not buy it to the point that I didn't like it, but I didn't like that they didn't give us a better reason, I guess would be as far as Trevor goes.
Yeah. Trevor was a surprise. Yeah, and I do agree that it was maybe a means to keep the character still around. I didn't mind the character, so it was a welcome surprise. It was just a weird situation to see him in, but I guess it was the only thing that would make sense as to why he would be back. I did like the fact that he remembered everything, and I did like the fact that he was going to try to blackmail her. I hated the fact that she ended up. I don't know if you would call it she blackmailed him, but she whatever you want to call it that she did to him. Like I was just like, ugh, I don't like that she seems to be this ridiculously prepared villain for everything, and yeah, so that was slightly annoying, although it fit very much in her character and that sort of thing. And of course, Leslie Jordan is always exciting to see back on the show, which I believe what it was Roanoke. Was Roanoke his only season? No. He was also
No,
in
because he was a
Coven.
council member in Coven.
Yeah, he was in Coven and Roanoke. So it's been a minute since we've seen him on American Horror Story. So moving right along, I talk about a storyline that was going to hit you in the feels. So we catch up with Jingles, who is now going by the name Donald. Be kind, please rewind. He's living in Alaska. He's got a wife who's a former hooker. They've got a son, and it looks like he's living the good life. It looks like everything is going his way. He's found love. You get a little bit of backstory of how they met, and it seems like Jingles is things are finally heading in a good direction for him. He was able to shake off Ramirez and all that kind of stuff, and he ends up seeing on the TV, news bulletin about the festival, and initially his wife is like, should we turn that off, and this, that, or the other, and he's like, no, I'm not triggered anymore, it's fine, she knows about his past and all that kind of stuff, and he's like, I have moved on, I am happy here with my life. And so one night he returns home, and he has found that the Night Stalker has caught up with him and has murdered his wife. So he was in prison. He had broken out with the help of Satan, and he specifically was looking for Jingles. And so, this is what he did as sort of payback for Jingles' help in the police catching Ramirez. And so Jingles ends up giving his son to, I believe that was his wife's sister, and it's like, I have to go away. He also says some stuff that I'm sure she doesn't understand, like, I didn't know this, that, or the other, and my past, and I gotta go right the wrongs, and you need to take care of this child. And she's like left with, where's your wife? And that kind of thing. And so the reason he gave his child away is because he needs to go get his revenge on the Night Stalker. So let's talk about Jingles and his life, his happy life that was unfortunately taken away from him. Maddie, did this storyline touch you? Were you sad for Jingles?
I really enjoyed his character, especially when now he realizes that he wasn't the one who originally killed everybody and stuff like that. So him having a good life finally was actually kind of nice. So I don't know. It was pretty sad that he is now dealing with, his past and it's nice that he's finally, getting somewhere, but at the same time it's like, yeah, it's pretty sad.
But you do love you some Richard Ramirez, right?
I do.
Okay, well there you go. Oh gosh. Vinny, what about you? Were you touched by the Jingle saga?
I mean, maybe I'm hard-hearted. I wasn't overly touched because in my eyes, regardless of the reason, he still actively made a choice to commit murder and atrocities. And I did not like the fact that he got away. I like that we got to see the character fleshed out, and I did have some sympathy for his plight. But at the end of the day, when you perform horrendous deeds like that, karma is going to bite you in the ass. And when he just left Ramirez to get caught by the police, he basically set himself up for this future destruction. The only way that someone like him was going to get away from a horrendous creature like Ramirez was to have killed him himself. That was the only way that Ramirez would not have showed up. And I mean, if it had been me in Jingle's place and I'd already killed people, I wouldn't have just set it up so that Ramirez got taken by the police. I would have beheaded him and buried his head on the other side of the continent from his body just because of the whole Satan thing, I know that's harsh, but this is the realm of American Horror Story. Instances like that, if you don't make sure that it's dead and that whatever supernatural force is bringing it back, you don't do reinforcements, you don't try, it's going to come back to bite you. So I wasn't surprised. I did find it incredibly humorous that he chose to go to Alaska, and they actually make the comment that, I think his wife made the comment at one point that everybody comes here who has something to hide. And I love that he ended up at Blockbuster in Alaska, just kind of doing the thankless rewinding job. So it reminded me of Madison in Apocalypse when we found out that she was in the hell dimension having to work in Marshalls. It seemed very fitting. To me, that was almost like a little Easter egg of sorts. But overall, no, I liked having his story fleshed out because the character was very one-dimensional before the middle of the season. And I did have some feelings for him, but at the same time, I didn't feel sorry that it happened because he kind of set it up to happen to him. And that's what happens when you're a murderer. Karma's a bitch.
Oh, damn. Vinny brought some straight talk. He ain't got no love for Jingles. Well, I will say, I thought John Carroll Lynch was fantastic. Throughout the entire episode, period. And I was really touched by Jingles. And I get the whole that he killed people, but he sort of killed people under the assumption that he had already killed people. Which, I mean, psychologically, I get why he justified his killings. But then once he realized that he hadn't really killed anyone, I mean, clearly he was remorseful. And so I liked that he had the chance to live a good life. I do agree that, yeah, the threat of Richard Ramirez was always going to be out there. It was... What happened was disappointing, but clearly if Ramirez didn't do what he did, we would not have Jingles back into the storyline, because it looked like, they could have easily written him off happy in Alaska. They could have done a spin-off show, Jingles in Alaska or something like that. But yeah, so he would have been off on his little, freezing cold island by himself in Alaska. I know Alaska's not an island, but you know what I'm saying. It's a metaphor. But because Ramirez did what he did, clearly he's back in the fold. So that's a good thing. But I I did like that he got at least a little taste of happiness, especially because he was locked away for all that time and that sort of thing. It didn't really answer what Jingles is, because clearly it looked like he died.
Yeah.
So I guess because he made a deal with the devil, he returned as a human, in a sense. Yeah, because if not, it's that whole ghost sex thing that we talked about, when Ray and Brooke got it on, and that sort of thing. Because we did learn that ghost sex is supposed to be bad, unless maybe it's just when you have sex with Tate because he was evil already to begin with. But yeah, so we don't need to talk about ghost sex. So let's talk about Brooke. So we haven't talked about her yet, and she's the final piece of the puzzle from this episode. So throughout the episode, we saw that Brooke, she's in jail. I'm not gonna lie, I was very worried that we were gonna get just a whole lot of Brooke in like an insane asylum. She was gonna get electroshocked and all that kind of stuff, and that shit was gonna break my heart. But no, it seems to be she's in a regular prison. She's on death row, and it looks like she's gonna be executed. During the Margaret side of the story, she actually gets a notification that Brooke was going to be given. She was going to be given the lethal injection and that sort of thing. Throughout her stint in the prison, she has this interesting conversation with Richard Ramirez. Basically, at his sort of like Satan-y best, he tries to lure her over to the dark side, saying that Satan sees a lot of potential in her and that kind of thing, and that all she's got to do is say that she will be sort of a devout follower so that she can be saved from death. And she's basically like, fuck off. And the whole Satan thing does not work on her. And so she is executed. Like, we see it. She gets the lethal injection. We go through the whole process, and we learn through the episode of what exactly happens when you get the lethal injection. It's a lot. And we see her dragged away. Well, before that, we see that Margaret, sort of sees her as like the final piece of the puzzle of everything that happened in Camp Redwood, like the final person that knows the truth, that will spill the beans. So we see her get dragged away, and we see that someone is there helping her, actually, because she gets injected by something else. She comes back to life, and the person that helps her is Jessica Lange. No, she wasn't there to do a cameo, even though it is.
Don't toy with my heartstrings.
I know. Did you actually believe me for a moment? You were like, did I miss that?
Oh, no. I remember how much I wanted her to show up, as always, and every time she doesn't, I just get sad.
I know. We all do. But no, it was not Jessica Lange. It was not Rita, a.k.a. Donna Chambers. So, Donna has saved Brooke from execution. Okay, let's talk about this. Vinny, since I played with your heartstrings, I apologize once more. What did you think of the Brooke side of the storyline?
Predictable.
Really? You saw the Donna thing coming from a mile away?
Oh, from like 400,000 miles away. The moment that Donna turned her table as far as her attitude about everything, and when she disappeared at the end of the previous episode when all this shit went down, I just had a feeling that she was, we saw that she was already starting to seek remorse, and when she couldn't get it from Montana and Trevor or Xavier, she ran with her tail between her legs into the night, and we didn't see anything from her. So when Brooke didn't die in the previous episode, I just somehow even before the promo, I had an idea that somehow Donna was going to... The promo, yeah. Yes. Yes. I just had a feeling that was what was going to happen, and it was confirmed when, she pulled off the lethal injector executor hood, and there was Donna with amazingly wonderful hair after being under that hood for so long. So
I know. It was like holding it in place.
I just had this moment where for a second I thought that Brooke was going to give in to Ramirez's offer of satanic companionship and join the dark side and become some like vampy mega bitch with like weird science hair. You know what I mean? Like I can't remember the chick's name in that movie, but she had like the big poofy, like sexy 80s hair. I wanted to have like Brooke suddenly become like Elizabeth Hurley and bedazzled and just walk out and like beat the crap out of Margaret with satanic magic or something. But obviously it didn't go that route. It went a completely different route. So I'm glad that Brooke has hardened. Obviously, she needed that backbone. She needed the time to be able to realize that there was more strength within her than she thought. And obviously, we saw in that little bit that prison has hardened her and that she's very bitter and very, very angry. So when she turned down Ramirez, I honestly wasn't surprised. I did want it to go a different route. But then when Donna showed up at the end there, I was pleasantly... I was pleased is the word I mean to use. And I was curious to see what was going to come from that.
Okay. What about you, Maddie? What did you think of the developments with Brooke? And were you surprised by Donna, or were you a complete buzzkill like Vinny, who predicted it apparently an episode and a half ago or something?
I was pleasantly surprised that Brooke kind of like held on to her strength for so long because, you know, being in prison for 5 years might have caused her to maybe give up in like some ways. So seeing her be strong and shutting Ramirez out like that was actually quite nice to see. But seeing Donna at the end of the, like when Brooke died, like from the injection, I was like, really? That's it? Like, wow, okay. Like, why keep her alive this long and then just kill her like that? Like, it's kind of stupid. And then seeing Donna after, I was like, oh, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. She was, quote unquote, the nurse. So it wasn't like totally surprising, but it made sense. It wasn't like it was unbelievable type thing. So, yeah.
Okay. I do agree that Brooke needed to be alive. So when they killed her, I was really shocked because I was like, if they're going to go this way, like this is sort of a game changer for American Horror Story because American Horror Story, I don't say it's predictable, but it's like you can tell certain actors are going to survive at least until the end, you know, when maybe they could die in the finale, but there are certain actors that I sort of see as people that are going to be still around until the end. And because everyone else had died for the most part, I felt like Brooke has to make it until the end. I feel like we all pegged Emma Roberts' character as being, you know, there until the final moments of the season. And so that shocked me. I didn't think she was going to be tempted by Richard Ramirez at all, so I'm glad that she basically told him to fuck off. But I was shocked that it seemed like she was going to die. So then when Donna... I did not guess at all that it was going to be Donna, but when Donna saved her, I was really excited, and yeah, like I was here for all of it, just because I'm enjoying Donna, I enjoy Brooke, and yeah, so this was a really exciting moment for me in the episode. So, before we get into the MVP, was there anything that I missed? Was there anything else that anyone wants to discuss, even a small moment before we head into the most valuable player?
Nope, I think I'm
I
good.
don't think so. I think we covered it.
All right, so now it is time for the MVP, the most valuable player. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character has been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. Maddie Fitz, who's your MVP?
I'm going to go with Mr. Jingles for turning in my boy, Richard Ramirez, and for wanting to start a fresh new life and actually doing it and actually being happy. And it makes me want to cry just knowing that he was able to turn a new leaf after, like we talked about, yes, he did kill a bunch of people, but he was doing it because he believe that he was a monster and he had killed people before and stuff like that. Obviously being brainwashed in a mental institution probably helped. But the fact that he's like, no, that's not going to be me. This isn't who I am, and starts a new life, that made me happy. So yeah, Mr. Jingles.
Vinny, what about you?
I'm actually going to choose Brooke. I liked her in this episode the most that I've liked her at all this entire series. It was awesome just to see some of that Emma Roberts steel coming through, because I was starting to twitch seeing her continually play this like dish rag of a character as far as like personality, strength, and all of that. So it was nice to see her kind of start showing that she doesn't need others to make her feel like she belongs, that she has herself. It sucks the way that she learned it, but I really, just in the few minutes that we got with her this episode, you could tell that change 100%. And I was really excited to see where that was going to head once she was resurrected from the dead, or unconsciousness anyway.
I like it. Great choices. And I'm going to go with, I'm going to go there. I'm going to give it to Margaret. Leslie Grossman has just been stellar this season. Out of all of the actors that are on this season, she's the one that I would say gets it the most. She fully understands what the theme is of American Horror Story 1984, and she has been pitch perfect ever since the beginning. Yes, Leslie Grossman, there was a hater among us in the beginning.
Oh, psh.
I won't name names.
I like her better now than I did as a creepy counselor. Like,
same.
I like her badassery now than before. Like, her badassery now was like how she was in Apocalypse. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a creepy
Agreed.
Christian like weirdo. Like, now it's like, now she's a badass bitch. It's not just like now she's creepy and I don't know how to take her type thing. It's like a completely different person in a way.
Well, she
was
herself.
giving me elements of Faye Dunaway as the villain in Supergirl.
Well, she outed herself. I was just going to say that the person that was a hater is not named Vinnie, but she decided to publicly announce her hateration.
Oh, stop.
Yes. But I really liked her in this episode. She has sort of embraced being this villain and is working for me. And I'm here for all of it. So now it is time to rate the episode. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 keys? The point system is allowed. And if you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may grant it the coveted golden key. And yes, you may jingle it. So let's start off with you, Maddie Fitz.
I am going to give this episode a 7.5 keys. 7 keys and a broken key. I thought it was a great episode for 1984, but it was lacking for a 100th episode. And I'm giving it past a 5, past just okay, just because it was like a solid episode in entirety of like the whole season and like a normal AHS episode, but I just thought it would have been a little bit more. That's why I'm giving it such a low score.
Okay. All right. We're starting off a little lower than I anticipated, but yeah. So Vinny, are we going to head in an upward trajectory? How would you rate this episode?
Oh, well, Jeff, it's the return of your absolutely favorite. I tried to resist letting him come back, but I can't. The Russian judge is here. I'm giving it a 5, hands down. As much as I loved it as an isolated episode. Yeah, I know. But I'm being really harsh on this because American Horror Story is one of my all-time favorite series, and one of my favorite elements has always been not necessarily the connectivity of the seasons, but not disappointing me other than Cult. The series has always really lived up to my expectations in one way or another, and I feel like giving us a promotional guide advertising that it was the 100th episode, getting my hopes up, I walked into this expecting so much more. And as I mentioned, even though I loved it as an episode of 1984, I still kind of had this like meh feeling after it because it was so isolated vignette, like as you mentioned, and I expected there to be something bigger going on other than the last story and the little bit that we got with Brooke and, I don't know. I feel like there was half missing from the episode that could have made it phenomenal as a 100th episode, a milestone for this series. And I just don't, I mean, I might be willing to give it a 5.5, but I don't feel like I can go that much higher because my expectations were so high.
The Russian judge is back. Das Vidanya, baby.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this comes to no surprise. I did enjoy the episode, so I will be rating it way higher than both of you. But I'm trying to not let the episode 100-ness cloud me too much, because as an episode, it was still very entertaining. And I do find it as a very rewatchable episode. I feel like this season is a very rewatchable season, period. It's entertaining. It's everything that I could have hoped for a 1980s slasher motif season. And it gave me something that I never really thought I would get, which is a true sort of epilogue to what we've seen thus far. And as I referenced in my initial reaction, not just an epilogue, but also a setup of the things to come in the final episodes of the season. So when it comes to that, it succeeded. As far as the episode 100 of it all, I mean, clearly, we already said it didn't do what it should have done. And so that does knock it a little bit, but it's not going to knock it enough, because it was still a pretty good episode. So I'm going to give it a solid 9. And yeah, because it was an enjoyable episode, so I'm not going to deny that. So on that note, join us next time for a brand new installment of Are You Afraid 1984. Once again, here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Poppy Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Poppy Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychuloradio.com. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@poppychuloradio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chulo Radio programs by visiting poppychuloradio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for Are You Afraid? 1984 and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-hosts, please wish the listeners a good night.
Good night, everyone. Yeah, das Vidanya.
Thanks for tuning in. Download new episodes of Are You Afraid 1984 every Friday via Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and the Poppy Chulo Radio archives. Good night.